Lydia Hemingway, and I am the CEO of Fertility New Zealand. Thank you for joining us tonight, and welcome to the Fertility New Zealand webinar series. In tonight's webinar, Nutrition and Fertility with Nikita Austin. Fertility New Zealand walks alongside all people facing fertility challenges. We do this by providing support and information services and being the voice of this community through our advocacy work. I encourage you to jump onto our website and check out our services and connect with us on social media. Tonight, I'm so pleased to introduce you to Nikita Austin, who is our wonderful guest presenter. Nikita has a degree in human nutrition and is also currently working at Fertility Associates. She has an immense passion for nourishing bodies to improve fertility outcomes and strongly believes that nutrition is an amazing modifiable factor that can significantly enhance the chances of pregnancy when included in an overall plan. During tonight's webinar, she will be discussing this, including practical ways that you can do, things you can do to optimize your fertility through nutrition. At the end, we'll have some time for questions. Pop them in the chat anytime, and then we'll go through them with Nikita after her presentation. Right, over to you, Nikita.
Thank you so much, Lydia, for the introduction. So, as mentioned, I am a degree qualified nutritionist, and actually many moons ago when I left high school, I completed a bachelor's degree in communication, majoring as a journalist, and my biggest passion was investigative journalism, but I found myself just constantly deep diving into nutrition research. So every spare moment I had, I was looking up nutrition and its many benefits, specifically in women's health. And this was about the time that Dr. Libby Weaver, who some of you may know of, who is a dietitian and nutritional biochemist, hit the scene with quite the bang. And I was just in awe of her knowledge and her in-depth understanding of how food could influence our bodies on a cellular level and make an overall difference to our well-being. And it was at that point that I was convinced that research was never going to be enough for me. So I decided to go back to university and study human nutrition at Otago. And I loved every moment of it and knew I had finally found my path. And for the past nearly 5 years now, I have been lucky enough to work at a fertility clinic here in New Zealand, which I feel super grateful for, because it has given me this amazing opportunity for continuous learning from some incredible experts in the field, all in an area that I am now most passionate about, which is women's health and fertility. So that's what I'm here to discuss tonight. And there's a few things that I'm going to be going over. So why is nutrition an important factor in fertility? The 4 main ingredients to consider to optimize when creating a baby. What's all the hype over the Mediterranean diet for fertility, and common causes of infertility that may be improved with nutrition intervention. So, why is nutrition an important factor in conception? Well, I could be here all night talking about it, but I'll try and sum it up in a few really important points. So some of you may be aware of the concept of the first 1,000 days, which, if you aren't aware, refers to a period of time 3 to 4 months prior to conception up until your child's 2nd birthday. And during these vital stages of development, there is a window of opportunity for future parents to lay the foundations for their child's lifelong health. And studies have shown that nutrition, stress, and environmental exposures can all play a really crucial role in this time period. And these have the ability to directly influence the expression of genes through epigenetics. And epigenetics is the study of how your behaviours and environment that you expose yourself to, including your diet, can change how your genes work without actually altering your DNA. So we're all born with our own unique set of DNA inherited from each parent. And although we can't change the DNA that's been inherited, we can influence how those genes are expressed and whether they're turned on or off. So it might help to think of these genes in your DNA as gates. Whether they are opened or closed, it will direct your health in one way or another. So your behaviors and the environment control many of these gates, guiding your body towards health or towards disease risk. And there's a saying, genetics loads the gun, but your environment pulls the trigger. So, what does this really mean? Well, it means that how you choose to live your life can influence whether a predisposed condition that you've inherited from one or both of your parents can either impact you personally or not. And 90% of our health is influenced by the environment that we expose our genes to. So, it's a really huge impact, and your choices can definitely make a difference. And what we know about epigenetics in pregnancy is that changes in pregnancy can be passed down from generation to generation. So your health is not only affecting your baby's health, but also the health of your future grandchildren. And so if we focus on ways to support hopeful parents from day zero with optimal nutrition and behaviors that are supportive to health, we can shape how genes are expressed to enhance your future baby's health and reduce the risk of things like allergies, obesity, type 2 diabetes, and cardiovascular disease. And we know that nutrition can also play a pivotal role in pregnancy outcomes, so reducing risks and complications like gestational diabetes and preeclampsia. And well before all of this, we know that we can improve egg, sperm, and uterine health, optimize ovulation and implantation for optimal pregnancy outcomes. So whether you've been trying to conceive naturally for some time or you're currently going through fertility treatments, infertility can often feel like it's beyond your control. But I'm here to tell you that there is hope and that there are things that you can do to take proactive steps towards improving your fertility outcomes. And although we can't change your age, your medical history, your family history, or your genetics, although we can influence how those genes are expressed, we can improve fertility outcomes through positive diet and lifestyle changes, through moderate physical exercise, through reducing toxins, alcohol, caffeine, stopping smoking and drug use. All of these things can be changed by you and give you some control back over your fertility. So let's look at the 4 main ingredients to consider when to optimize your chances of conception. So we've got sperm, egg, uterine health, and supplementation. So eggs and sperm are the first cells that your baby will ever have. So we really want to ensure that they're the healthiest cells that they can be. Sperm health really should be just as high on your priority checklist as egg health. For some really strange reason, women seem to get this overwhelming burden and responsibility placed on them when it comes to preconception care and investigations. Many women believing that the responsibility and outcome falls solely on them. But men, I'm afraid to tell you that actually baby making is a team sport, and sperm makes up 50% of your embryo's DNA, which means you are significantly contributing to the future health of your baby. And research suggests that male factor infertility contributes to around 30 to 50% of all cases of infertility. And over the past 50 years, sperm quality has decreased by 62.3%. And although there isn't enough research yet to understand fully why this is happening, we do know that diet, lifestyle, and toxin exposure can play an influential part in affecting the quality of sperm. And so it makes sense to focus on the modifiable factors to see if we can improve these statistics. Slides seem to be a little bit delayed. There we go. So from puberty, males start producing sperm, and it takes around 90 days to get a new batch of sperm, which is incredible because every 90 days we get a new batch of opportunities. So despite sperm being produced daily, it does take a while for the immature germ cell to become a mature sperm cell, which is approximately 74 days, and then it can take another 16-ish days to migrate from the testes into the ejaculate. And what's most important to consider here is that sperm is very sensitive during the course of these 90 days, and this is because the cells are rapidly dividing during this time, and they're most susceptible to DNA fragmentation and oxidative stress. And this is also the optimal time to be improving sperm health by protecting against these forms of damage. So DNA fragmentation refers to breaks in the DNA inside sperm cells. And so DNA is like the blueprint for creating a healthy baby. So if the DNA is damaged, it can make it harder to achieve and maintain a successful pregnancy. Oxidative stress, on the other hand, is probably a more familiar term. And this is basically like a rusting process that can happen when harmful molecules called free radicals, they come in, they attack and damage healthy cells. So if sperm is exposed to oxidative stress, this can affect their ability to move, to fertilize the egg, and to maintain healthy DNA. Essentially, it weakens the sperm, making it a lot harder for it to do its job. So how can we reduce the risk of DNA fragmentation and oxidative stress? There are a few things to consider here, many of which would be of value to females as well. So we know that smoking and vaping plays a really big role and is probably one of the most well-established lifestyle factors in the research that clearly shows much poorer sperm outcomes. The oxidative stress caused by smoking can reduce sperm counts, motility, which is the ability to swim, damage the sperm morphology, which is the change in shape, and also reduces the ability for the sperm to penetrate the egg. So all around, it's not a great thing to be doing if you are trying to conceive. Abstaining from alcohol for at least 3 months prior to conception is the ideal situation. If you are going to drink, we don't recommend any more than 2 standard drinks per day, and avoiding binge drinking, as this can be quite detrimental to sperm health overall. Caffeine in high doses has also been linked to several negative effects on sperm health and on sperm DNA. So just keep an eye on your coffee intake. You can absolutely still have coffee, but we just want to limit that to around 200 milligrams per day if we can. And this might look like a double shot 6-ounce flat white, typical Kiwi order, and you can have 2 of those per day. So just be wary though, as some cafes will add a 3rd and 4th shot depending on the size of the cup. So that might pay just to check that as well. Saturated fats and trans fats have been shown in the research to be quite damaging to sperm counts and concentration. These come from processed foods, fried foods, as well as animal fat. So try to avoid eating visible animal fat, opting for leaner cuts of meat, whilst also minimizing your intake of processed meats like bacon, ham, deli meats. Endocrine disrupting chemicals. So while we'll never completely eliminate these from our environment, unfortunately, we can certainly do our best to minimize them. So these chemicals can mimic, block, or interfere with the body's hormones, especially hormones that are involved with sperm production. So think phthalates, parabens, BPA. Try opting for glass or aluminium for food and drinkware storage. Swap out your non-stick pans for cast iron, stainless steel, and ceramic. And avoid plastics, even BPA-free. Unfortunately, they contain other chemicals that aren't so helpful to us. And never heat your food in plastic. Try put it on a ceramic or a ceramic plate or a glass dish before putting it in the microwave. And then finally, heat exposure. So testes hang away from the body for a reason, and this is to ensure that they're slightly cooler than your core body temperature. And there are certain activities and clothing that can potentially increase the heat to the testes and damage the sperm quality. So just limit the use of tight underwear and bike shorts. If you are a cyclist, or you sit for really long periods of time, just try to take frequent breaks if you can. Stop putting your laptop on your lap and avoid those hot tubs, saunas, and steamy baths when you are trying to conceive as well. And, as mentioned earlier, we can positively influence sperm parameters that maybe aren't looking as optimal as we would like them to be. Step 1, obviously reduce these things that can cause harm. And step 2, increase the things we know to turn the bus around, so to speak. So given nutrition is my jam, of course, I would have a list of nutrients that can be supportive to this. So starting with folate, eating folate from your diet rather than just supplementing has been shown in the research to improve sperm count. So eating more of your fortified breads and cereals, your dark leafy greens, spinach, broccoli, kale, and including these in your diet every day. So there's actually been some interesting research to show that males who obtained folate from their diet had much better sperm parameters overall than just supplementing with folic acid. So supplementing is a great insurance policy, but in this instance probably shouldn't be the first port of call. Zinc is actually lost in the ejaculate every time, so males have quite a high requirement. So eating more oysters, shellfish, fish, beef, chicken, eggs, baked beans, nuts, even cashews have zinc in them. And I've actually heard once from another practitioner that zinc is in men as iron is in women. So iron is lost in menstruation every month for women, so women have higher requirements, and zinc is lost in the ejaculate every time. So just a good way to remember that there are some really important minerals that men require too. Antioxidants have a really important protective effect on fertility. Antioxidants help fight off that oxidative damage in the sperm, which we know can contribute to the DNA fragmentation and increase the risk of miscarriage. And these special antioxidants here have all been shown to improve all parameters, including motility, which is that movement, count, and morphology, which is the sperm shape. So vitamin E is found in almonds, extra virgin olive oil, avocado, sunflower seeds, peanut butter. And then you've got the humble vitamin C. If you're eating your recommended intake of fruit and veg, 7+ a day, then it will be very easy for you to obtain the right amount of vitamin C. Obviously found in high amounts naturally in kiwi fruits, citrus fruits, berries, and capsicum. Selenium, 1 to 2 Brazil nuts a day will give you the perfect dose of selenium. Lycopene is another powerful antioxidant that can be found in high quantities in red fruits, especially tomatoes when they're cooked. And last but not least, omega-3s. They are essential to improving sperm health. It's best to aim to eat around 2 to 3 times per week of oily fish. So think salmon, sardines, trout, hoki. Plant-based sources are not converted as well to the active form of EPA and DHA, which have shown to be the most beneficial. But if fish really isn't your thing or you are vegan, then a really good option would be an algae oil-based supplement. And just to reiterate that to ensure sperm are created in optimal conditions, it is really important that we make these changes 90 days at minimum prior to trying to conceive a baby, because that's what will make all the significant difference. And just a fun wee fact here. So there was a randomized control trial, which is like the gold standard of trials, conducted in 2012, looking to see whether the addition of walnuts to a Western style diet whether it would make any impact on sperm parameters. And they found that the group that consumed 75 grams of walnuts per day without changing anything else showed improvement in sperm vitality, motility, and morphology, with no change seen in the group that weren't consuming the nuts. So this is a huge win for walnuts, and also a super easy thing to implement into your daily diet. And I mean, we love easy. We don't want to make things complicated. Moving on to eggs. So unlike males, women are born with all the eggs that they will ever have. And in fact, as early as 16 to 20 weeks gestation, while still in your mother's belly, a female fetus will have their lifetime supply of eggs. And until it's their time, each egg will just exist, not fully mature, in a state of suspended animation. And approximately 4 months prior to ovulation, a small pool of immature eggs will begin to grow. And whilst most of these will die off naturally, there will be one golden egg selected to finish maturing, to ovulate, and to travel the fallopian tube to potentially meet sperm. And egg quality plays a really crucial role in how long it can take to become pregnant. Although there are obviously many factors that can influence the development of an egg into an embryo and then onto a viable pregnancy, one of the most important factors is having the correct number of copies of chromosomes. And the best way we can influence this is by providing the egg with the energy that it needs to mature correctly. And these important little power cells within the egg that produce the energy are called the mitochondria, which might be familiar from maybe some high school chemistry or biology. And over time, and in response to that wee villain called oxidative stress, the mitochondria can become damaged and less able to produce the amount of energy that's required. And although as much as we would love to, we just can't take the eggs of a 35-year-old back in time to when they were 25 and of much higher quality, but we can look to protect the egg from oxidative stress and provide that mitochondria with the energy that it needs during that 3 to 4 month window prior to ovulation. And just an important thing to note, there is no way to test for egg quality. You may have heard of an AMH blood test, which is an anti-Müllerian hormone blood test. This is used as the best method of testing for egg quantity, mainly in IVF or egg freezing. But there is no way to test for the quality of these eggs. IVF clinics can test the quality of embryos, but not eggs. So there are some signs of poor egg quality, such as multiple miscarriages, unexplained infertility, multiple failed IVF cycles, and also women that have polycystic ovarian syndrome can have a higher risk of lower egg quality. So just something to consider when you're thinking about looking after your eggs. And just like with males, there are quite a few lifestyle factors we want to take into consideration to improve egg quality. We know smoking can cause oxidative stress, especially on the eggs, and it can cause unnecessary DNA damage, which can increase miscarriage risk and chromosomal abnormalities in your baby. So smoking really needs to stop if you're looking to conceive. Sleep 7 to 8 hours a night is ideal, as this will just give your body a chance to repair cells. Moderate exercise has numerous benefits on egg health, including improved hormonal balance, reduced stress and anxiety, reduced inflammation, and reduced oxidative stress. Really important not to overdo it. Moderate exercise is really key. Exposure to endocrine disrupting chemicals, alcohol and caffeine, all these recommendations are very similar to that of males. The only difference is that we don't recommend drinking alcohol 3 to 4 months prior to conceiving for females, just because the evidence is a lot stronger for pregnancy outcomes without it. Nutrients to support egg health are very similar to those supporting sperm, but and many of these nutrients do have multiple benefits, but I'll try and limit it to just a couple. So choline is a lesser known but vital nutrient, and it's essential for DNA creation and repair, but also works alongside folate to reduce neural tube defects. And zinc in females actually supports progesterone production, which is a hormone that is released during ovulation and helps to thicken your uterine lining for the embryo to embed itself into. Then we've got the omega-3s again, particularly DHA, improves blood flow to the ovaries and uterus. It supports egg development and implantation, and it also reduces inflammation, which creates a favourable environment for conception and improves overall egg health. And then we've got those powerful antioxidants, which we know reduce oxidative damage and contribute to producing much healthier and more resilient eggs. Moving on to the uterine lining. So I was contemplating whether or not I kept this aspect in the presentation, but I felt like egg and sperm get all the attention and we often forget about the home that the little embryo is meant to live in for 9 months. And it needs just as much attention and support. So the health of the uterine lining is also known as your endometrium. And it's crucial for the success of conception as it plays a central role in the process of implantation. And ideally, we want a uterine lining that is thick with optimal blood flow for an embryo to implant and thrive. And any disruption in the development or function of this process, such as increased inflammation or an imbalance in bacteria, can hinder the implantation process and increase the risk of miscarriage. And there is a growing body of evidence to suggest that certain nutrients can influence the thickness and quality of the endometrial lining, which can increase the likelihood of an embryo sticking and staying there. And now, if you are going through IVF, it's very common for people to arrive at the 2-week wait, which is the time frame between an embryo transfer and a pregnancy test, where people often want to know what they can do to improve their outcomes, often worrying what they should eat in the lead up to an embryo transfer or on the day of an embryo transfer. And sadly, there just isn't a great deal of research to suggest that any particular nutrients will show any improvements in this particular window of time. But as it's that last hurdle in IVF, people often feel like it's the most crucial period of time to get right. But really, it is that 3 to 4 month window prior for both partners, optimizing the egg, sperm, and uterine health in advance that will really make a difference. So try not to worry about that lead up. Try and just stay as calm and stress free as possible because those few days and on the day aren't going to make a huge difference. And although implantation is complex, there are a few areas that have shown some promise to support an optimal uterine environment. So improved gut health and hormone regulation. Fiber-rich foods like whole grains and vegetables are known to promote better digestion and gut health. And a healthy gut microbiome plays a really important role in regulating hormones related to fertility, including estrogen and progesterone, both of which are essential for a healthy uterine lining. Having optimal estrogen levels also enables repair and thickening of the uterine lining in preparation for pregnancy. And in order for your body to create estrogen, it requires you to consume dietary fats, particularly monounsaturated fatty acids found in extra virgin olive oil, avocado, nuts and seeds. And these will also help to reduce inflammation. And then you've got your antioxidants like vitamin E and vitamin D, which is best sourced from being out in the sun, and omega-3s. They can all help reduce inflammation as well. And then iron, particularly from plant-based sources, has been associated with improved uterine blood flow and oxygen delivery to the endometrial lining. And many plant-based iron sources, including legumes, lentils, spinach, all come packed with antioxidants, flavonoids, carotenoids, vitamins, all the things, which are going to help reduce inflammation in the body as well. So a double whammy. And chronic inflammation is a really key factor in many reproductive disorders that can hinder implantation in the uterine health. And lastly, the uterine microbiota or microbiome. So finally, this is still a growing area of research and more or less pertains to people who have had multiple miscarriages or have a known history of inflammatory conditions. But the uterine microbiota in this context refers to a community of bacteria living in the uterus, just like that of our gut microbiome. Once upon a time, they did think that the uterus was a sterile environment. However, we now know that this is not true, and in fact, there's an incredibly diverse community of bacteria living here. And what studies have shown is that if there is an imbalance in that beneficial and pathogenic bacteria in the uterus, this can be linked to an inflammatory process, which can disrupt the uterine lining's ability to support an embryo and in turn reduce pregnancy rates. We also know that a healthy uterine environment that has shown higher birth rates in IVF specifically is typically dominated by lactobacillus species. So more reason to consume yogurt, sauerkraut, and other probiotic-rich foods that do have that high yield of lactobacillus in particular. Moving on to supplements. So just a wee disclaimer, not all supplements are created equal. Some are combined with things that may not be the best for you and your individual needs. So it's always important to check with your healthcare provider before starting anything. One, to ensure that you're getting the right product and the right dose, and two, to ensure that you're not spending your money on a product that's just not going to be of any benefit to you. But I thought I'd list some supplements to consider in regards to optimizing fertility. So other than the essentials like folic acid and iodine, a really high quality prenatal supplement 3 to 4 months prior to conception is a great insurance policy, and something that I definitely recommend females looking to conceive consider. There are some really great options on the market, but do keep in mind, again, they're not all created equal, and essentially anyone with money can create a multivitamin. So it's important not to just pick the most popular brand and to get some advice. There is one really important ingredient that I do suggest that you look for in a prenatal, which is choline. So I have talked about that a bit tonight already, but choline is required for fetal brain development, placental function, and helps prevent neural tube defects alongside folate. So in 2017, the American Medical Association advised that prenatal vitamin supplements should contain choline, and that pregnant women should aim to obtain adequate intakes of dietary choline as well. So requirements during pregnancy are around 450 milligrams and 550 milligrams when breastfeeding. You can get about 118 milligrams from a whole egg. So if you're having a couple of those a day, it does leave a bit of a gap to reaching that requirement. And that's why it's just helpful if you have it in your prenatal as well. Please be aware that not all supplement companies have caught up. So there are quite a few prenatals that don't contain choline. So just important to check that before you buy. Omega-3 supplements, particularly DHA and EPA, play really crucial roles during pregnancy, both for maternal health and fetal brain development. And there's also research to suggest that in IVF, taking an omega-3 supplement can speed up time to pregnancy. And in an ideal world, we would recommend obtaining omega-3 from dietary sources, so the fatty fish 2 to 3 times per week, salmon, hoki, trout. But research suggests that many New Zealanders may not be meeting their omega-3 dietary requirements. So if seafood really isn't your thing, it might be a good time to speak with a healthcare professional about whether an omega-3 supplement could be the right fit for you. Dosages do change person to person depending on your baseline omega status, your diet, and also if you have any inflammatory conditions. It's really good to correct nutrient deficiencies, and some of the nutrients to consider vitamin D. So low vitamin D levels are linked to a higher risk of miscarriage, which is quite a concern given the majority of the New Zealand population do fall below the ideal vitamin D serum blood levels for pregnancy. Iron, especially if you've previously been iron deficient, you have heavy menstrual periods, or you have celiac or Crohn's disease, as it can be a lot harder for you to absorb iron. Iron is especially important in pregnancy because it can be a lot harder for you to increase those levels whilst pregnant. So it's a really good idea to set yourself up optimally before conception. And then B12 and folate, these often go hand in hand when testing. B12 is especially important to check if you are vegan, vegetarian, or if you are on metformin, as it can deplete your vitamin B12 levels. And vitamin B12 is important for many reasons, but it's also an essential component in the methylation of folate in your body. So if you don't have enough B12, then your body won't actually be able to convert that folic acid into folate in your body to prevent neural tube defects. So especially important to check those levels. and some other beneficial supplements which would need to be tailored specific to your cause of infertility. We've got myo-inositol. So this supplement can be helpful for women who suffer with PCOS, so polycystic ovarian syndrome. It's been shown to improve insulin resistance, glucose metabolism, ovulation, and menstrual regularity. And there are a couple of different forms. So it is, again, really good to speak with a healthcare professional to make sure that you get the right form for you. And then CoQ10 is a really popular one. So it's a fat-soluble vitamin that acts as an antioxidant in the body, and it enhances the mitochondrial function by producing that energy required for the cell. And research does show that this particular supplement can be beneficial for improving the number of mature eggs and embryos in IVF for women over 35, and it can also help sperm with oxidative stress. The dosing in the research is around 400 to 600 micrograms per day, and that's spread out across the day. And then finally, a preconception multivitamin for males. So if the male sperm parameter needs a bit of extra support, then a male preconception multivitamin with the inclusion of zinc could be a really good idea. But again, I stress getting specific advice for you just to ensure that you're maximising your chances of conception and reducing any risks of complications for you and for baby. So what's all the hype over the Mediterranean diet for fertility? Well, I thought I'd cover what it entails first. So it kind of has a list of what foods to eat every day, a few times per week, less often. And so every day, vegetables, whole grains, fruit, extra virgin olive oil, nuts and seeds, legumes, beans, lentils, herbs and spices. And then a few times per week, fish and seafood, yogurt and cheese, poultry like chicken, turkey, quail, and other small birds. Less often, red meat and sweets. And under drinks, plenty of water. The Mediterranean diet does also include a small glass of red wine with food enjoyed with company. However, it is recommended when trying to conceive that during that 3 to 4 month window that you don't consume any alcohol. Coffee also makes an appearance, but again, ideally limiting that to 1 to 2 cups per day. And as you'll see there, a really big component of the Mediterranean diet is exercise and also spending time with people, which is really cool to see as part of a diet plan. So you may see some similarities in a lot of those foods and nutrients that I've mentioned tonight to support egg, sperm, and uterine health. And that's for a really good reason. The Mediterranean diet is often considered one of the most beneficial dietary patterns for preconception health due to its emphasis on monounsaturated fats, on antioxidants and omega-3s to support reproductive health, fetal development, and improve fertility outcomes. But it's also been studied for numerous other benefits, such as reduced risk of cardiovascular disease, type 2 diabetes, and Alzheimer's. So overall, it's an incredible diet based on the research. But if you needed more evidence, I have got that for you. So one of the most interesting studies on diet and IVF success rates in 2010 surveyed 161 couples at an IVF clinic in the Netherlands. And after analysing each woman's diets, researchers found that those women who closely followed a Mediterranean diet before the IVF cycle had a 40% higher chance of becoming pregnant, which is an incredible statistic. Research published by the Journal of Clinical Endocrinology and Metabolism also indicates that the diet's anti-inflammatory effects may improve endometrial health and reduce the risk of complications like gestational diabetes and preeclampsia. And it doesn't just stop with women. So the Mediterranean diet has been associated with much better sperm parameters overall. And this is likely due to its high content of omega-3s, zinc, and selenium. So from the research, we can understand that people who mostly comply with the Mediterranean style of eating are more likely to experience better fertility and pregnancy outcomes, whether that's through IVF or non-assisted conception. So my top 3 simple pantry staples to get you started with the Mediterranean diet. Number 1 is what I what comes to mind first for me when I think of the Mediterranean diet, and that's extra virgin olive oil. So it's rich in monounsaturated fats and packed with polyphenols, antioxidants, and vitamin E, vitamin K. And whilst the studies show that it also has significant anti-inflammatory effects, which can be really helpful for those people with inflammatory conditions like endometriosis. And the vitamin E, we know, is also super important to support healthy uterine lining, for implantation and optimal sperm and egg health. Plus, the fat in this oil actually enhances our body's ability to absorb all the incredible antioxidants that it also contains, which is just magical. So, aiming for 2 to 3 tablespoons per day for optimal health benefits. You can cook with it, it is safe to cook with it. Drizzle it over any foods. And then we've got the dried or fresh herbs. So just a little sprinkle like fairy dust is far more potent than what you might realize and packs a flavor punch. So adding just 1/4 teaspoon of dried oregano, for instance, to a Greek salad dressing, to a homemade pizza, on your roast kumara, can give you the same amount of antioxidants as half a cup of kumara. So talk about incredible value with really limited effort. And then we've got canned, jarred, or fresh tomatoes. So tomatoes are rich in the antioxidant lycopene that can neutralize free radicals, protect egg and sperm cells, and enhance their quality. And this antioxidant is especially potent when cooked and is the best base for soups, Mexican dishes, curries, pasta. And I've got a little recipe there on the right-hand side for a Mediterranean base sauce called sorbito, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. And basically, it's the inclusion of all 3 of these ingredients, plus or minus some carrots or celery, and onions and garlic. And by incorporating the extra virgin olive oil with the tomatoes, it again enhances our body's absorption to get all of that antioxidant from the tomatoes. So double, triple whammy to put these things all together. So does the Mediterranean diet show any improvement with these common causes of infertility? Well, PCOS affects 10 to 20% of women of reproductive age, and it is a leading contributor for female infertility, or the reason why some women might present for fertility assistance. And the Mediterranean diet is rich in whole foods, unprocessed foods, healthy fats, and really focuses on plant-based nutrients, which all addresses several key aspects of PCOS, including insulin resistance, which affects around 70% of people that have PCOS, inflammation and hormone imbalance. So people that have PCOS can sometimes have high androgens, which play a part in excess hair growth and acne. And so overall, the Mediterranean diet is definitely supportive of PCOS and could be of some benefit to those that suffer with the condition. Endometriosis. So at this point in time, we don't really have any formal data to show that any particular diet is the best diet for endometriosis, but the Mediterranean diet is one of the best options that we have. In theory, it aligns with the current state of evidence. We know that endometriosis is inflammatory, and the Mediterranean style of diet is an anti-inflammatory diet plan. We also know that there's a protective effect for endometriosis for people that consume an increased amount of vegetable consumption, omega-3 fatty acids, avoid trans fat and alcohol. And again, this all aligns with the Mediterranean diet pattern. And there is some research. So in a randomized control trial, again, another gold standard, 68 women were diagnosed via laparoscopy to have endometriosis, and they were all put on the Mediterranean diet for 5 months. And the results from that showed that the 63% of patients that were compliant with the diet all showed significant improvement in their general pain symptoms, and they all registered lower pain than they did before the diet. So this way of eating could definitely have some symptom relief for some patients, some people. And there is one thing to consider though. People that have endometriosis are 3 times more likely to have IBS. So the legume component and the whole grain component could be detrimental to someone with IBS and might not be the best dietary pattern. So would be really important to speak to a nutritionist or dietitian before making any of those dietary changes. So in summary, optimizing health prior to conception starts 3 to 4 months prior to trying to conceive. Try and control the controllables. So reduce the lifestyle factors and foods that are detrimental to your success and incorporate those supportive aspects. Make sure to check for nutrient deficiencies, specifically vitamin D, iron, B12 and folate, and consider supplementation for your root cause if you know what it is. Incorporating aspects of the Mediterranean diet is going to be the most supportive for positive fertility outcomes and for overall health. You don't have to have a Greek-style meal at every point in the day, but just incorporating some of those aspects and removing some of those harmful foods will definitely show some benefit. And sufferers of PCOS and endometriosis may definitely benefit from the Mediterranean style of eating in relation to symptom management and fertility outcomes. To my next slide. Yep, that's me all done. Thank you very much. I'm super grateful to have had this opportunity to speak to you all, and now I can hopefully answer some of your questions. Alrighty, so number one, let's have a wee look here. Hi there, how can we test my partner's sperm to see if it's okay? So one of the best ways to go about that would be to visit your GP. So if you ask them for a semen analysis test for fertility, you'll be paying the GP cost, but there's no cost for the test. And they'll just give you a lab form to take to your local pathology lab and hopefully some instructions as well. You want to make sure that that sample is delivered within an hour of being produced to get the optimal results on that one. Should I be worried about mercury in fish if I'm eating it 2 to 3 times per week? No, not at all. So the best way to think about it is the size of the fish. So the bigger the fish, the higher likelihood or predictor of mercury. So basically the larger the fish, the longer they've lived, the more small fish they've eaten, and then the higher concentrations of mercury. So you can actually go onto the MPI website as well, and they can give you, there's a lot of guidance on there as to what fish in New Zealand have lower concentrations of mercury. But if you stick to like your canned, your tuna, your salmon, which is also a much more affordable way to have salmon, fresh salmon, hoki, trout, they're all absolutely fine and have low enough levels of mercury. Christmas is coming up, so are we tempted to eat more indulgent foods? Do you have any tips on how to navigate this? Yes, absolutely. So firstly, I just want to premise with the fact that one day of eating indulgent foods will not make a big detrimental impact on your fertility journey. So make sure you enjoy that day and you have the foods that you want to have. If you really don't want to and you're trying to avoid someone shoving that 10th piece of cake down your throat, a really cool, like real key thing to say is just, I don't feel like that right now. I might have some later. And people will generally drop it and leave you alone. So yeah, just say that you don't really feel like it right now, and hopefully they'll move on to someone else. Is it actually important for females to take folic acid before you're pregnant or just once pregnant? Can I get enough from food alone? So folic acid is really important to take prior to conception, because when you fall pregnant, the fetus can't actually create its own it creates the neural tube for the fetus. So if you don't have it prior, then that can induce your risk of miscarriage. the baby can't create it on its own. So you really kind of need that nutrient to be there to create that neural tube for the fetus. And getting it from food alone, it would be very hard to get it just from food alone. It is best to take a folic acid supplement. Some people also look to take a methylated folate. It is a bit more expensive, but how folic acid works is that it's a synthetic form, and so when you take it, your body then has to methylate it to turn it into folate. And some people do have, due to gene variants, have a reduced ability to do that in their body, and therefore taking a methylated form of folate will just ensure that they're getting the right amount. But yeah, definitely recommend taking a supplement. I wanted to get my vitamin D levels tested, but my GP wouldn't test them. I heard I can do it myself. Is this true? Yes, yep, you absolutely can. There's quite a few things that you can have tested and pay for privately. There's a website called mytest.co.nz, which is a super easy website to use, and you just kind of add vitamin D to your cart, pay for it, and they will give you a lab request form that you can take to your local pathology lab, get the blood test done, and they will just email you the results. Ideally, you want the result to come back at between 50 to 75 nanomoles per litre. 75 is kind of more optimal, and you don't want it any higher than 125. If you do have really low levels, again, it'd be good to speak with a healthcare professional on what dose of vitamin D would be really good for you, and how long you'll need to take it just to increase your levels. Can you give me some recommendations on prenatals that have choline in them? Yes, so there are some great practitioner-only brands, but obviously that's a bit more difficult to get unless you visit a nutritionist or dietitian, or some naturopaths as well. But there's one that is quite accessible to most people. You literally can just Google it. It's called NaturoBest, so Naturo Best, BEST. That one contains a really good amount of choline in it, and it's actually quite an affordable price compared to some of the other prenatals. They also have a male prenatal that contains zinc, so a really good brand to look at. But again, just make sure that you are getting additional advice, because there may be some other nutrients that you need support in that aren't in that multi, or that are in too high levels for your needs. So again, just get that extra support and knowledge if you can. Can you test if you have the right balance of bacteria in the uterine lining? So yes, you can. This is primarily done through IVF clinics. So the test is called an Emerin-Ellis, and it looks at the amount of bacteria that is in the uterus. And again, yeah, primarily done through an IVF clinic. So if you are doing IVF treatment, it might be something that you could, and maybe you've had multiple miscarriages, something you could discuss with your fertility specialist. Sometimes they opt not to do the test because it is quite expensive. It's about $850 to do that test. And sometimes they'll just give you a probiotic supplement to see if that makes any improvement, rather than doing the test, which is kind of a good wee workaround. Should prenatals be continued once baby is here to support breastfeeding? Yes, normally a lot of practitioners will recommend continuing to take your prenatal at least 6 months into baby's arrival. Just kind of safeguards you for any nutrient deficiencies, and it's quite a big thing having a baby. It takes a big toll on your body, so it's just a good way to make sure that you're looking after yourself, and getting all the nutrients that you need for breastfeeding, and looking after yourself, being, keeping alert. Do you have an example of what a day on the plate would look like for the Mediterranean diet? Yes. So a day on the plate, for breakfast, you could have a couple of pieces of whole grain toast with avocado and a couple of eggs. Maybe as a snack, you could have a handful of strawberries and a handful of some natural nuts, a mix of nuts. For lunch, maybe a salad with like a cup and a half of chickpeas, which gives you a really good dose of fiber and protein, some cucumber, olives, some extra virgin olive oil, maybe some herbs in there, some feta. For afternoon tea, you could have a Greek yogurt, maybe with some chia seeds in there. You could have some carrots and hummus. And for dinner, maybe just like a palm size, doesn't have to be big, just a palm size amount of salmon with some brown rice and maybe 3 or so different varieties, multicolours there of roast vegetables, maybe some carrots, some beetroot, some capsicum. That would be probably my wee plate for following the Mediterranean diet. Is smoked salmon good? Yes. Oh, yep. Smoked salmon is absolutely fine. It's just as good as any other salmon for fertility. Still has all the omega-3s, EPA and DHA. Is deer velvet useful for improving sperm health? That's a very good question. I have heard a little bit about deer velvet as a supplement. I can't actually give an answer as to whether it would improve sperm health. I haven't seen a lot of research on it, but I have heard anecdotal benefits. So could be something to look into a bit further with either another healthcare practitioner. But yeah, I don't know about deer velvet in terms of the research, unfortunately. What are the best sources of protein to replace chicken and fish for vegetarians? So you could look at things like chickpeas. Lentils are also really high in protein. All of those legumes are really good choices because not only are they providing you with protein, but they're also providing you with fiber, which is great just for stabilizing blood glucose levels and keeping you feeling full for longer as well. But also I would recommend, if you're not having fish, to have that omega-3 supplement just to add in for those omega-3s. Is it beneficial in New Zealand to drink filtered water? Absolutely not. I wouldn't say it's like a necessity to drink filtered water, but if you have the ability to drink filtered water, then there's definitely some benefits to that. Just minimizing your intake of some heavy metals and things like that. Although I don't believe there's a huge amount of heavy metals in New Zealand drinking water. Again, it probably varies across the country. Not something I'm super familiar with, unfortunately, but there's definitely benefit if you do have like a filter, then definitely use that. What type of coffee can we drink? I have withdrawals when I don't have coffee. I think that is something that a lot of people would be familiar with. So coffee, it doesn't really matter what form of coffee that you have. It's just the amount of caffeine. So as long as you're having less than 200 milligrams of caffeine a day, that would be my recommendation. So as I mentioned, sort of 6-ounce flat white, that sort of size, that would give you 128 milligrams of caffeine. So if you're having 2 of those, that's fine, really. Yeah, any sort of coffee is fine. It's just that caffeine amount. So you can Google as well if you've got a favorite coffee, like an Americano or something like that. You'd be able to Google how much caffeine is in that, which might be helpful. Thank you very much for someone just said that it was a super interesting presentation. I'm pleased that it could be helpful. Do you recommend removing dairy or gluten intake to manage inflammation for endo? Yeah, so there's a lot of mixed research, and it really depends on you and your personal circumstances. If you are sort of trying to manage IBS, on top of that, then removing gluten has shown some benefit for some people, and also doing like a low FODMAP diet is another option, which would be best done with a practitioner to guide you, because it's definitely not something that you need to be on forever. It's definitely a short-term thing, but there's definitely been evidence to show removing gluten can be helpful. In terms of dairy, again, it's kind of like person to person. It does vary. I wouldn't immediately go to remove both of them straight away without any other practitioner guidance. But there's also been research to suggest that high-fat dairy can also be beneficial to reducing inflammation for endo. So maybe opting to change your dairy sources to like Greek yogurt, other sort of forms, those higher fat forms, you might see some benefit there. But again, yeah, really depends on your individual situation and how those things are affecting you, whether they're affecting you in any other way. Is there a link between tubal blockages and inflammation, and how diet can impact that? That's probably a better question for a fertility doctor. I haven't seen any of the research to suggest a link between nutrition and tubal blockages. Definitely inflammation. So, like I said, Mediterranean diet is anti-inflammatory, so that's going to help reduce inflammation overall. So definitely a good route to take if you have an inflammatory condition like endo, or maybe a thyroid condition like Hashimoto's or Graves', both quite inflammatory. So yeah, there's definitely a link for inflammation, but tubal blockages, I'm not 100% certain on that one. Do you have any way we can chat to you in future if we have more questions come up? This is being recorded. I have a copy. Yes, this is being recorded, so it'll be on the Fertility NZ website, so you can rewatch it. And yes, I have a newly made Instagram page called nourished_by Nikita. So if you have any more questions, or you want to talk about your fertility for any additional support, then definitely reach out. I would love to have we chat to you and help direct you and give you some guidance.
Hi, thank you so much, Nikita. It was so super interesting, and we've actually been really overwhelmed with questions. So thank you so much, everyone. I'm just mindful of time for Nikita, but also all of you out there tonight. If you do have any pressing questions that we weren't able to get to tonight, then please contact Nikita on her Instagram page, or else you can also contact us on our helpline, support@fertilitynz.org.nz, and we can help with that, or get you through to Nikita also. It was so great doing Nikita, so much valuable, important information, and at a really understandable sort of pace and way. So thank you so much. And yes, as mentioned, the webinar has been recorded, and it will be available on our website, fertilitynz.org.nz, very, very soon. But make sure to follow us on social media and keep up to date with our webinar series. We are taking a break over the holiday season, but we'll be back in 2025. So keep an eye out for that. And also on your inbox, if you're not a member of Fertility NZ already, then please do join up. It's free. You can do that on our website, and that way you can keep up to date with our webinars, both upcoming, but also we'll highlight some great ones from the past that we've done as well. So a big thank you again, Nikita, for your time tonight, and in preparing for this. Is such a valuable topic for our community, and I think that's been really evident tonight with all of the questions and how valuable it's been. So thank you everybody for joining us tonight. It's been really, really great. I hope that the rest of your evening is enjoyable, and as the silly season is fast approaching, I hope that this has been valuable for that and all of your ongoing nutrition needs, especially regarding fertility. Take care out there, enjoy the holidays, and we will see you again in 2025.